Hello, friends. Do you love tea and natural wellness products as much as I do? I've partnered with Positively Tea and Positively Botanicals, and I can honestly say I drink their organic loose leaf tea almost every day, and I love it. From organic teas to natural remedies, they offer high-quality products that support a healthy, mindful lifestyle. When you shop through my affiliate link, you not only discover amazing products for yourself, but you also help support the podcast. Visit the link in the show notes to explore their selections today. And for you coffee lovers, they have you covered as well. Treat yourself, support the show, and keep connecting with the natural world. Hello, friends, and welcome to the Nature Wanderer podcast. I'm Paul, and I'm really glad you joined me today. Hopefully you brought some friends with you today. I'm always encouraging you, share this with your nature-loving friends. Let them learn about nature just like you do. But if you have, even if you haven't, I'm just happy you're here today joining me. And today we're going to talk about a very interesting, successful conservation story. Yeah, a comeback story, so to say. It's about a bird who, the numbers dropped quite a bit many years ago, and then they started making a comeback. And we're going to talk about how that happened. And the bird I'm talking about is, well, he's a pretty interesting bird. He has been domesticated. It's the wild turkey. Yeah, the wild turkey. They went from being quite abundant in North America to almost gone, and now they're becoming abundant again. Yeah, so it's a great, successful conservation story for the wild turkey. If you're not familiar with the turkey, it's that guy you see out in the field, very chunky, looks very round. He's got this ugly thing hanging off of his neck. He makes a gobbling noise. You may not be familiar with the wild ones. Maybe you're familiar with the domesticated ones. And there is a difference between the two, which we'll talk about in a little while. So strap in and get ready for a great conservation success story. So let's meet the turkey, Meleagris galopavo. Both the wild and domestic turkey, they are genetically the same bird, so they share the same scientific name. Now, they were domesticated in, I've seen different sources say the U.S. and other sources say Mexico, but they were domesticated in the Americas. So where did the turkey get its name? Well, the wild turkey got its name when Europeans arrived in North America. You see, wild turkeys were everywhere. They were already here. Indigenous people had known, hunted, named them for thousands of years. So they already had a name, but unfortunately, those names didn't carry over into European languages. So the settlers reached for a familiar word to them. You see, in Europe, the word turkey was already in use, but not for this bird. It was kind of a catch-all name applied to any exotic bird that was imported through what they call the Ottoman Empire. Many of those birds arrived via Turkey, the country. So Europeans loosely labeled them turkey birds. Accuracy, not the goal. Novelty was. So when Europeans encountered this large, strange, ground-dwelling bird in North America, they saw something that reminded them of those imported birds, and they reused the name. Different bird, same label. And that name stuck. By the time anyone realized the wild turkey was a completely different species than the one in Europe, the name had already settled in. Early English records actually refer to it as turkey cock or a turkey hen. Some called it the Indian turkey. Over time, the extra words just fell away and the turkey remains. Now, science eventually stepped in to tidy things up. The wild turkey got that scientific name, Meleagris galopavo, which separated it from the old world birds entirely and places them firmly into the new world. But common names are stubborn. Once they root, they don't move. So the wild turkey is entirely native to North America. They were named after a place that they never lived. You never found these birds in the country of Turkey. So in other words, the wild turkey didn't get its name from where it came from. It got its name from where people thought it came from. So it did get a little confusing. Now the native range of the turkey, where were they from if they weren't from Turkey, the country? They weren't from Europe. No, they're actually found here in North America. Most of eastern United States, the Midwest, Great Plains, parts of the Southwest, and central Mexico. They were abundant from the very high mountains, the densest boreal forest, the far northern plains. In short, if there were forests, woodlands, or forest edges, there were turkeys there. Different subspecies occupied different regions, but together they formed a nearly continent-spanning presence. They were everywhere throughout the United States and part of Mexico. I keep calling them wild turkeys. I'm going to cut that wild thing off in a minute, but they are different than the domestic birds. Not in a genetic sense. You see, genetically, they are the same, but there are differences. If you've ever seen a wild turkey, they're all brown in color, browns and blacks, very beautiful colors. They can even have a little bit of iridescence in their feathers, whereas the domestic ones that we usually see on the farms, all white in color. The ones in the wild, much thinner in weight. They're getting plenty of exercise. They can fly, whereas actually they can fly. I used to think it was around 40 miles an hour, but I did some deep research and I found that they have actually clocked them close to 60 miles an hour. So yeah, they can fly quite well, even though we mostly see them on the ground. The domestic ones, they're too fat. Remember, we're overfeeding them so that they can be a good meal at Thanksgiving time or whenever we decide to have them for dinner. And so because they're so fat and heavy, they can't fly. No, they can barely get off the ground. The domestics, they're bred for food. They're much bigger, much fatter. They are white in color, whereas the wild ones, they are very healthy birds. They can fly quite well, short distances. They're not going to fly long distance. They're not like a songbird, but they can fly short distances quite well. They roost up in trees. They're so different than the domestic ones, but they do have the same genetics. So that scientific name, it sticks to both domestics and wild turkeys. So these are the wild ones that I'm going to be talking about throughout this podcast. They are not the clumsy barnyard birds that we might be familiar with. And honestly, I think I've seen wild turkeys more than I've seen the domestic ones. I don't go around the farms with all the domestic turkeys around them. I have seen them at the farms, but usually I see them more out in the wild, and the numbers have been going up and up and up. The original numbers, pre-European population before settlers came to this country, they estimate was around 10 to 20 million wild turkeys all across North America. Now, the reason that those numbers are so high, and it's just an estimate, 10 to 20 million wild turkeys across North America, the reason the numbers were so high is there were vast unfragmented forests, and these are forest-loving birds, even though we see them in the fields all the time, okay? The reason we see them in the fields, I just saw some last week in the field. It was a good-sized flock, maybe 15, 20 of them, and they were in this old farmer's field. You could see the little stalks sticking up from the corn. They were just looking for food. That's why they came out of the forest. It was easier to find food in this farmer's field, this cut down cornfield. So that's why they're in the field. But mostly they're in the forest. They like the forests. So if you have a lot of forests, you have a lot of turkeys. And that's the way it was before the European settlers got here. Back then, there was minimal hunting. You had the Native Americans who were hunting them, so there was minimal hunting pressure compared to later when there was a lot of market hunting. There was a very healthy predator-prey balance. Now, turkeys were so common that early accounts actually described them as easily hunted because there were so many of them. They're regularly seen in flocks, and they were a routine food source rather than just a novelty food source. They're basically a part of daily life, not something you remarked on. Oh, hey, I saw a turkey today. You know, back then it was just common that you saw a turkey, so it wasn't a big deal. Now, unfortunately, by the early 1900s, after the early European settlers got to our country, well, the wild turkeys had been eliminated from much of their original range by the early 1900s. Some states actually had fewer than a couple of thousand birds total, and in several states, they were completely gone. At their lowest point, the entire U.S. population actually dropped to somewhere around 30,000 birds. That was it. So they went from being extremely abundant to, well, pretty much gone. What went wrong? Well, in the mid-1800s, that's when the downfall started. They were overhunted. Remember, there were so many of them. They're easy to hunt, easy game bird. So they were hunted by the early settlers, and they were overhunted. There was actually market hunting going on in the 1800s. What I mean by that is they were killed extensively for food, for, well, headdresses. Yeah, the feathers were prized in women's hats. So they were hunted extensively. And because the early settlers cleared a lot of the forests for agriculture and for logging, they had to have the lumber to build their homes and build other things. These birds lost their habitat. They lost the woods. So now they had fragmented woods, or they were just missing woods completely, especially in high agricultural areas of the country. By the early 1900s, because of all this hunting and habitat loss, well, that's when they hit their low point. And like I said, some estimates say there are probably only about 30,000 birds left. Here in New York and up in Vermont, along with a bunch of other states, they were gone completely. They vanished from those states. I can't even imagine going into the woods without any turkeys. Can you imagine how quiet it would be? Yeah, the turkeys that gobble that we're used to, gone completely. Now, when they got down to that number, luckily, they didn't disappear completely. That was the turning point. The turning point actually started during the Great Depression. Farms were abandoned, and forests returned. Yeah, so when you have a farm that's abandoned, no one's there plowing the fields, no one there is there cutting the hay, no one's cutting down the fields. So it grows. Starts out slow, but eventually you get the trees coming in. So you have young forests that grow into older forests. And when you have a complete forest, it's new habitat for the turkey. There were some attempts for captive breeding, early attempts, mostly at the state level. And these were pretty much unsuccessful. For some reason, they would breed these birds, set them free, and they would just vanish, disappear. They would die. Yeah, they'd find them dead. And the reason is, well, one of the reasons is that they were just not capable of surviving in the wild. They didn't know how to survive in the wild. This was like a new thing to them. They were used to being fed. They were used to getting their food. And so they bred them and released them. I've seen that with other game birds, like pheasants. I have been driving down the road and had a pheasant once who was just sitting in the middle of the road, not moving, just staring at me. And it's like I'm laying on my horn and they just stayed there. Didn't know what to do. I've been on the trail and walked right past a pheasant. And they just look at me like, okay. That's a bird who has never learned how to survive in the wild. I can always tell they were captive bred. And the same thing happened with the turkeys. Who was going to teach them the dangers, how to stay out of dangers, how to go up into a tree to roost at night so that the fox and coyotes don't get you down on the ground? How do they know that they should stay out of the road so that they don't get hit by a car? They had these early attempts, and they're mostly at the state level. Federal government didn't do this. It was the state levels, and that did not work. It was very unsuccessful. Now, they have the forests now. They have some turkeys starting to move into those forests, but it wasn't happening quick enough. By the 1950s, biologists started getting involved in the reintroduction. And they realized that because the captive breeding was not working, they needed to get wild stock. So they started researching where the strong populations were, and they started netting them, what they call cannon netting. Basically, it was like a little cannon that would shoot a net out so that they could go. Cause you can't just run up to a turkey and throw a net over it. So they had these cannons that shot a net out over the bird, and they would capture them that way. So they went to these places with strong populations, they cannon netted them, and then they would take them and relocate them to new locations. Places where there weren't any turkeys, or very few. And when they released them, they found because they were already wild, they survived. And they started breeding, and the population started to grow. But that's not very good if people are still overhunting them. So they did also at the same time realize that the only way these birds were going to survive is if they started making stronger conservation laws to help prevent the birds from disappearing. What these conservation laws did is they protected the habitat. So they made sure that the forests weren't cut down in certain areas. They tried to make sure that there wasn't segmented forestry going on where there would just be little segments of forest. No, they basically were protecting the land for it. And they regulated hunting. Hunting licenses were issued for turkeys, and you had to have a hunting license, and they only issued so many, but you had to have a hunting license if you wanted to hunt a turkey. And you're only allowed to hunt so many. That allowed the populations to keep growing. By the 1970s, there was a strong population of turkeys. And hunting, well, some hunting did resume for them because the populations had grown so strong. But once again, they were regulated. Okay, the hunting was regulated, but it actually took till the 1970s for the population to become strong enough for them to actually allow the hunting again. The state wildlife agencies did work with the hunters to make sure that they kept the population strong. I mean, this was in the interest of the hunters as well, because if they start overhunting again, they're going to lose the turkey as one of their game birds. So they regulated it, the hunters understood, and they basically helped to conserve these birds. Success came because they started understanding turkey behavior, not forcing the solution of, oh yeah, let's just breed these birds and toss them over here. No, the biologists got involved. They started understanding how the turkey behaved, where they were supposed to be, and the turkeys just took off. Now today, the turkey population is back to its normal. Well, we're actually going to say it's beyond the normal. Yes. So the original territory where turkeys were, it's not only full of turkeys again, but it has expanded. Yes, it's actually expanded up into Canada. It's expanded down into Mexico again. Turkeys are very abundant now. They're more abundant than they originally were. And the population is kept in control. Now, it sounds like a great success story, which it is. So why doesn't it work with all animals? Because, I mean, they've tried this in the past where they've taken certain animals and they tried to place them into different habitats. Some are successful, some are not. Why were turkeys thriving and others didn't? Well, first of all, turkeys are a bird who had habitat flexibility. I mean, they are mostly in the forest, but they also will use forest edges and mixed landscapes. So you'll get them out in the forest on occasion. You'll get them out in the fields on occasion. I mean, like I say, I see them crossing the road. I see them out in farm fields in the winter time. I do see them in the forest when I'm hiking. So I do see them in a lot of different habitats. They are a bird who is flexible about their habitat, mostly in the forest still. And they have diet adaptability. They can change their diet easily. They eat a lot of different foods, mostly seeds, mostly plants. They're also a bird who has a high reproductive potential. Yeah, they do breed quite well. This is why their population increased, why they thrived so well. And unfortunately, other animals don't always survive when they try these reintroduction programs. Now, turkeys today, I looked up what the population status is today, and all the information that I found said the same thing. There's high levels of population. There's a lot of them out there, but no one would give an exact number because no one really knows. But we do know that they have expanded their territory. Like I said, most of the U.S., Canada, Mexico. They have moved into suburban habitats, which sometimes is not good because, well, suburban turkeys do cause human-wildlife tension. A lot of people don't like them in their backyards. They don't like them eating their plants. They don't like them going into their vegetable gardens and eating their food. Yeah, so, hey, they're just trying to survive too. But unfortunately, because the population has increased and they're very adaptable, and we create these habitats in our yards that are more natural, it attracts the turkeys. So they're going to be there. And unfortunately, that means that there is tension between humans and the turkeys sometimes. Although if you do see them and you do like, I mean, I love seeing turkeys if they walk through my backyard. We used to have them when I lived out in the country further. Where I live now, I haven't seen them in my backyard. I've seen them down the road, but I haven't seen them going through my backyard. I haven't seen any sign of them. I think it's a little bit too populated where I am. But if you do see turkeys and you like them in your backyard, that's great. Watch them, but do not feed them. If you feed them, well, then they start getting used to people. They start becoming habituated, and they lose their natural fear. They view humans and cars as non-threatening, or even dogs sometimes. So they will become habituated and they can get in trouble. Yeah, when they go off to another habitat somewhere, out of your yard, out of your neighborhood, they're probably going to be chased down by a fox and they won't know that it's danger, or they'll run across the road figuring, oh yeah, these cars are safe, or they will go on a golf course and not be afraid of the people there. Yeah, it can mean trouble. And you don't want to get too close to these guys. They are very aggressive birds. They will show aggression and dominance displays if there are threats around, which we are threats to them unless we start feeding them, so please don't feed them. The male turkeys, known as the toms, the tom turkey, they will actually establish pecking orders and they will become aggressive, challenging anything that they see as a rival or a subordinate, including people, cars, or pets. I have seen videos of them chasing dogs before. They can do property damage. They can destroy gardens, scratch car paint, leave droppings on patios, decks. A lot of reasons why people don't like them around. And if you have a turkey who is, they can get to be up to 20 pounds, pretty large. They can run up to 20 miles an hour on the ground. If they're showing this territorial aggression towards me, I'm headed the other way. Yeah, I don't want to be attacked by them. And there have been some cases of turkeys attacking humans. Please just watch them from a distance. So why not just go back to overhunting them? Why did we want them back? Why did we do this conservation for them? Why are we keeping the populations high? Especially if we have such a problem with the turkeys that I just talked about. Well, first of all, they do have an ecological role in the environment. Seed dispersal. Remember, they're seed eaters, they're plant eaters, so they're dispersing these seeds for new growth. They're helping the forest grow. They're also great with insect control. Yeah, they eat a lot of insects. And besides being on our dinner tables, they're dinner for a lot of other animals. Yeah, so they are prey animals. So they keep the circle of life going. Fox, coyote, other animals like that, they eat turkey. It's a large bird. It's good food for them. So they're part of the circle of life. And because of this, they actually have reshaped the forest dynamics. They've gotten them back to that equal stage. When wild turkeys returned to our forests, they didn't arrive with fanfare. No dramatic transformation, no instant before and after photo. No, instead, they went to work quietly. Turkeys spend much of their day in the forest floor, scratching through leaf litter, turning over last autumn's leaves in search of acorns, seeds, insects. With every step, they're loosening soil, exposing nutrients, and speeding up decomposition. It's small work, but repeated thousands of times and over years, it subtly reshapes the ground beneath our feet. They also feed heavily on insects, especially in spring. When the young poults, which is what we call a baby turkey, when they need a lot of protein to survive in the springtime, they're eating caterpillars, beetles, grasshoppers, keeping the insect population in balance. And that balance ripples outward, easing pressure on plants and seedlings that are trying to grow in the understory. They're not being eaten by the insects because the turkeys are eating the insects. Turkey changed the fate of seeds too. Some are eaten, some are scattered, some never get the chance to sprout where they fell. The result isn't uniform growth, but patchiness, and forests thrive on patchiness. The return to the forest also helped the circle of life, as I was saying. The eggs, young birds, they once again became part of the seasonal rhythm for predators. The energy began moving along pathways that had been quiet for decades. Oh, and speaking of quiet, and then there's the sound. Yeah, the forest with turkeys. Boy, it became quite a talkative place. Yeah, those clucks, the gobbles, the yelps, the wing beats, alarm calls. Yeah, their presence, in my opinion, it adds to the forest. Those calls we're hearing, the sound of the turkey once again came back to the forest. So the wild turkey, I mean, they didn't remake the forest when they came back. No, but they did restore the texture of the forest. There was more motion, more noise, more relationships. And maybe that's the real lesson of their comeback. Conservation success doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes, it looks like leaf litter being gently rearranged, one scratch at a time. So turkeys are an important part of the ecosystem, an important part of these forests. So it's good that they did have a comeback. I am so glad they made it. So get outdoors, start watching for the turkeys. Yeah, they're not the prettiest birds. I think they're beautiful, but beauty's in the eye of the beholder, I guess. But enjoy them. Look at them in a different way now. We could have been without turkeys. They're such a beautiful bird. So get outdoors, start looking in the open fields for them. If you're out hiking in the woods, start looking around. And when you see them, start appreciating them even more. I'd like to thank you for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed listening to the podcast. Be certain to share the podcast with your nature-loving friends so that they too can learn more about the natural world around them. If you'd like to support the podcast, visit the show notes for a link to my Ko-Fi page. You can also support the podcast by purchasing awesome items at my online merch store. And if you like to journal your wanderings through nature, maybe record all the turkeys that you're seeing or draw pictures of them, be certain to purchase Nature Wanderer Nature Journal. All the links are in the show notes. Well, I hope you enjoy the rest of your week. Stop back in a couple of weeks for another episode of the Nature Wanderer podcast. And next week, you'll get a new episode of the Forest Connection podcast. Be sure to join me there. Have a great one and keep exploring the nature around you. Hello, friends. I hope you're out wandering through nature, exploring the natural world around you. Do you enjoy writing about your wanderings? Nature journaling is an awesome, fun way to remember all the adventures you have taken and how you felt during those journeys. If you're looking for some beautiful journals to keep track of all your wanderings, I have several available on Amazon, including some guided journals for children. Start your journey in journaling by clicking on the link in the show notes. Keep exploring the nature around you and keep journaling all your wanderings. Hey there, fellow nature wanderers. If you're like me, you love spending time outdoors, breathing in that fresh air and connecting with the natural world. But at home, have you ever thought about what's in the products you use every single day? That's why I'm excited to share Apple Valley Natural Soap with you. Their handcrafted all-natural soaps are made with organic ingredients, essential oils, and no harsh chemicals. Awesome! So they're not only great for your skin, but they're safe for the planet. And they don't just stop at soap. Apple Valley Natural Soap also carries a full line of natural skincare products, including shampoos, body butters, facial bars, and more. All designed to nourish your skin without synthetic ingredients. You can't beat that. That's just awesome. Whether you're hiking in the woods or just winding down after a long day, their products bring a little bit of nature right into your home. And the best part? By supporting Apple Valley Natural Soap through the Nature Wanderer, you're also supporting this podcast. Just head to the show notes and click on the link for Apple Valley Natural Soap. So go ahead, treat yourself and the environment to something better. Your skin and Mother Nature will thank you.